Hello. A couple days ago, I was driving past the Charles Camsell Hospital here in Edmonton, Alberta, and it is world famously known to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Now, of course, I was driving by in the middle of the night because that's what I like to do. I like to go for drives in the middle of the night sometimes. Sometimes to catch Pokemon. Sometimes it's just to calm myself and relax. Other times it's just to go and be of service to all of the um, energies and people floating around Edmonton to help them get to their final destinations. And yes, that is always heaven, unless they're just happy here and they just want to hang out. So, driving by Charles Camsell Hospital, normally it's one of my favorite places to go. I love to look at the building and just feel the energy and feel the vibe of it. There's a lot of different stuff happening there all of the time, and normally it's kind of like a peaceful grumbling. Nobody's ever really too angry or too, they're all kind of, status quo. But I did notice that there is more built on the site. I know that a long time ago, I think it was like 1996, the hospital itself was decommissioned and sold to a developer. And it had to sit vacant for X amount of years. I think it was like 20 years or something because of all the asbestos that was in it. And then it needed to be cleared out of the asbestos, which everything took tons of time. So what the plan is now for this developer is that they're turning it into condos. They've been working on the project for a number of years. There's probably a couple of years ago they had windows put in, and everything kind of went really slowly for a long time. But the other day when I drove past, I noticed that the land has looks like some townhouses or fourplexes or something like that built on it, and across the street. So all of the Charles Camsell kind of area, which is in the middle of a beautiful little neighborhood anyway, but all of the Camsell land has been developed. And you can see, like, you can't get close to the hospital, of course, because it's a construction site and it's all blocked off. But you can see in through the windows, it looks like they've got a lot more structure for the condos built on the inside, the framing on the inside be happening. So I was quite surprised to see this. I haven't been by there for a while. And so when I parked and checked it out from the car, of course, you don't want to break any laws of trespass. And it's scary in the middle of the night. You don't want to, not the dead people. Dead people don't scare me. It's always the living people that scare me. Always. So, sat in the car and did some check-ins with some of the residents, the ghostly residents, and this time, for the first time ever, I was not greeted happily. I was yelled at and told to go away. um, the indigenous spirits that live there and have been there for the first time that I've been alive have they've taken a stand. They are pissed. They are angry and pissed. They feel like they're being violated. They made it very clear that they do not want anybody else around. All of the development stuff that's happening now is angering them a lot. It was pretty much a collective voice that I heard. Sounded like thousands speaking to me in one voice, clearly saying, "Go away, leave us alone. We do not want any more people here. There has been too many disturbances, and you're not welcome." The land itself, I'll tell you some of the history, and I don't know much about the history. You're better off Googling it. I know that it was built in like around 1912-ish. The Jesuits built it to become a boys' school, and then during the war, World War II, it was used somehow, I think as for the soldiers. I'm not sure if it was as a hospital or like just some place to live or sleep or anything. And then I know it was after the war, it was used as a hospital for Indigenous people that they would bring from the north and have them there when the tuberculosis breakouts were happening. Like the most awful things our government did. Like I honestly cannot comprehend what the fuck they were thinking, because it's just the most asinine, angering, heart wrenching things I've ever heard. So I know that they would bring in Indigenous people who had tuberculosis of all ages, and they would put them in that hospital, and they would receive treatment. But it was not the same treatment white people receive. It was a different treatment. So we all know what that means. They were experimented on. And instead of honoring the lives that were robbed from these people, leveling everything and making it some sort of sanctuary or sacred ground, they are turning it all into housing for wealthy people, because we know nothing there is going to sell for cheap. Gets worse though. Not only did they do experimental treatments on Indigenous people with tuberculosis, they kept them there. They would, burn people there, turned it into resident school, resident housing. You just lived there after. I'm pretty sure that meant you weren't allowed to leave. And it's probably more of a prison. It's probably more of a prison for these people than anything. And how many people died there? Of course, nobody knows, kept track. So after all of that fiasco, they turned it into, or I think they leveled that building, and then the Charles Camsell Hospital was built on top of it. And Charles Camsell himself, the namesake, I believe was a geologist. Why they named it after him, not a clue. But I did have surgery in there when I was, sorry, just I can't decide if I'm angrier or sadder. It's just so many emotions. So many emotions. I did have surgery there when I was young, in my teens. And back then I didn't really know that I was psychic or that anything was like that my family was kind of as weird as we are. So all I knew is that it was so noisy in that hospital, and it was so busy, and there were all these people walking in and out of the walls, and I couldn't figure out where they were coming from or where they were going, because the wall was like the outside of the hospital, and I would see people leave the wall and go outside, and I was like, there must be a staircase or a bridge. I didn't know. And people would come in, and I was like, how are they doing that? And this is when I wasn't on the drugs. After surgery, they put me on morphine, and I put a stop to that really fast because the morphine made everything so much worse. But it was so noisy, the underlying kind of hum and buzz, and just so many voices on top of voices, and anyway, it was horrible.